I'd like to give a warm Coach's Edge welcome to one of our own, Kendal Muxlow, PFW. Kendall, we go way back, right? You talked a little bit about how old you feel a little bit from being a player into being a coach before we hit the record button. But director of basketball operations at Purdue, Fort Wayne in Indiana. Excited to have you on the show. Been following your season. You guys finished up 23-13 in the Horizon League, lost in the Sweet 16 of the women's WNIT. I'll talk a little bit about your season here, but first off, how you doing? Thanks for being on the show.
Awesome. I'm doing great. I'm super happy to be here, talk to you about kind of what's been going on. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we probably connected when you were in eighth or ninth grade. I remember,
Yeah.
and coming out to one of our camps, and I just still remember the players that are really good. You never forget them, right? And it's not because, they necessarily play a certain way that stands out because they all play. Everybody has their own style. But any player that I've worked with that really I felt like squeezed kind of all the orange out of the juice, I put you in that category. Like they're all like really, really hard workers combined with being great listeners. I always felt like you had those two characteristics, and I could go down the line of other players we worked with that went, Division 1, Division 2, whatever. And I just think that's a common characteristic that you embody, right? Is it being having a hunger to continue to learn, to continue to get better, and then on top of that, being able to put in a crazy amount of work and time, which kind of was 3 out of 4 years All State in high school. Had some knee injuries, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. That was an All State player for Brown City, numerous records there, a ton of team success. Gets a scholarship to go play college basketball. Tell us a little bit about your transition, one from high school to college player, and then from college player into college coaching.
Okay. So I would say college or high school playing to college. It's the biggest thing is the game moves so much faster. And AAU does help with that, but I did, like Steve said, I tore my ACL my junior year of high school. So that's like junior year is like one of the biggest years to play AAU. So I was kind of on a hard, I had kind of a hard spot. My senior year, I really had to grind because I was going into my senior year with like some looks, but not many like big offers that I was hoping for. So I would say the biggest thing is the speed. Just because like going up and down, like I said, AAU will help with that, but the speed is a lot. And then also just like your mindset going in is a freshman, like in high school, like you're kind of the big dog. You're
Mhm.
like, and then you go into college and like you get humbled real quick because everyone around you is better than you or as good as you, and you have a lot of stuff to learn. Defense is there's a lot of little details that really matter. And if you don't do those right, like it honestly could cost you a game.
Yeah.
And so I would say being detail oriented is a big one, and obviously the pace of the game and just
Mhm.
like being willing to learn. There's a lot of plays, you run a lot of plays. I know in some high schools, you run like just like a main motion offense or wheel or something like that. And in college, like there's some coaches you potentially run a play every single time down the court. So you just have to be willing to put in the time, definitely a lot of film. And honestly, one of my biggest pieces of advice for freshmen coming in would be to find like a senior or someone like a vet that's been in the program and just spend time with them, like even doing workouts with them, going over plays with them, watching film with them, because they obviously know the coaching staff and they've been there long enough to help you with that style of play better.
Mhm.
Um, and then from the college playing to the college coaching, obviously it's a easier transition than just getting into the coaching world, but there's a lot of extra time that you have to put in that you don't realize. For example, like as a player, you go down to your locker and there's new gear in there. There's everything's down there. Everything's just laid out for you. And like sometimes you forget to think about that people have to do that for you. So as a player, you come in for practice and weights and all that stuff and film, and then you go home for the day, and then you come back and everything's ready. Practice is ready, all that stuff, film's ready for you. And I think you just forget that there's people behind the scenes that are putting in so much time just to get all that stuff ready for you and get that ready for you to succeed on the court. And then as a player, you're more based on, like, obviously you want your team to win, but individually you're trying to be the best that you can be at like such a high level that like you're focused on putting your own player development in and like working on your own player development. And as a coach, it's more like, I need all my players to do this, but then as a team, we have to do this as a whole as well. So it's a lot more team-based, but also individual based, I would. And coming from staying in the same program that I played at, it's just like a different relationship that I have with the girls now. I'm a little more cautious with some things, I would say. So playing, you can be a little bit more free. Obviously, you're in the same age range as them, and you guys are going through the same situations and things as players. And then when you get on a different side of the ball, you kind of look at those scenarios a little bit differently. Yeah.
Man, that's a golden nugget. I was talking with some of the players that work some of our basketball camps, and I was like, there's this balance, right? Because everybody wants to be liked, and we're all human, right? And as coaches, we all want to be liked, but sometimes as a coach, you're in a position where I care about you, but I care more about you becoming a better player and helping this team more than I care if you like me at the given moment. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's like a difficult balance, I think, for all of us, especially in the beginning, is how do we figure out how to balance, hey, when to be like, hey, that was funny. I was a family. Well, okay. And now it's time to like, hey, well, we need you to execute, like you said, defensively, this little nugget, it's not up to par. Right. And now you're not going to play. Right.
Yeah.
And finding that balance, there's a real sweet spot in there that I think is tough for coaches to balance, but that's a really good one right there. When it comes to director of operations, what are a couple of the key roles that you have at the school?
So the key roles, I do a lot of travel. So I will book the hotels, the buses. I do all the food. So that's a large job. But normally just like everything behind the scenes, the itineraries for the trips, the timing of everything. And then I work with any teams that come to Purdue Fort Wayne. I work with them for like practices, and time slots, shoot around slots, stuff like that. So most of the things, basketball wise, I would say, is our other GA. So there's two GAs, me and then Quincy Cunningham, and we kind of split it up where he does like the breakdown of like some film and practice stuff, and then I do the behind the scenes work. Yeah.
As you said, there's so much work to be done because as coaches, you're spending so much time with the players.
Yeah.
Players, you get to go home, but the preparation aspect, coaches are still working. They're just not with the players anymore. Like you said, whether that's prep and getting uniforms prepared, everything ready for practice, game fill cutting, you hop on the bus. Well, who's incorporated time? Who's incorporated the pickup? Who's incorporated the meals? Right.
Yeah.
You're still at practice. You're still at all the games. And then there's all this extra work that is going into it. You truly have to love the game in order to be able to do that. I want to talk a little bit about your team this past season. As we mentioned before, 23-13, really successful season in the Horizon League. Horizon League is no slouch. You guys shot 35% from three this year. Your opponent shot 28% from three this year. You also shot 199 more threes than your opponents this year. So you do the math, you outscored your opponents from the 3-point line by 351 points this season. That's a lot of points, coach. So I want to know, like, what's the secret to one, you shot much higher volume and also a much higher percentage shooting the three. Talk a little bit about, the 3-point, philosophy at PFW.
Yeah, so I think first off, the biggest thing is that when Coach Mark came in, like she was like obviously determined to turn the program around. Coach Mark came in and the season before we had won one game one game the entire year, and we were just kind of on a downhill slide. We got a coaching change. She came in super determined. I think the coolest thing, first of all, was that she kept everyone that was here.
Mm.
And she obviously didn't have to do that. She kept the girls that were here, and she just kind of had to change their mindset. And she always says, get on the train or get off the train. And everyone that was here decided to get on her train. And obviously that train's been moving because she
Fast.
knows, yeah, fast. She knows exactly what she's doing. Yeah, so once everyone kind of bought into her system, she definitely obviously changed how our girls played. She focuses more a lot on like either the 3-point shot or the around the rim
Mhm.
layups. We don't do a lot of pull-ups, and our offense is a lot of motion stuff, I would say. There's a lot of movement, and we have our bigs, and a lot of the bigs touch the ball almost every single time that we're gonna go down the floor. So having them come up to the elbow and stuff like that opens up a lot of areas. But our girls have really like we just want to win. And so our girls spend a lot of extra time in the gym, which is amazing because they don't have to do that. And obviously it pays off for them. So yeah, our 3-point percentage is absolutely crazy, but it's props to the girls because they're putting in so much time in the gym to get better at
Mhm.
that.
Return the same group of players. They're invested. Got the buy-in from coach. They got to knock down the shots. No question about that. But talk a little bit about how you're creating those shots. There's a lot of ways you can get up threes, right? And there's a ton of ways that we can just say, hey, we're just going to bomb away. We're going to shoot higher volume. That
Right.
doesn't necessarily equate to team success all the time. That doesn't necessarily equate to a higher shooting percentage as well. What do you say is the most common 3-point shot type that you guys have?
Hmm. That's a tough one. We run a lot of plays. We are one of those teams that either it's transition
Mhm.
or we're probably going to run a play down the as we go down the court. So I would say just like her play calls based on each of the teams that we play allows for those wide open shots, and it will differ on the team that we play. So
Mhm.
obviously she'll go back and watch film and figure out what worked, what didn't, what is going to be open, what's not going to be open. And so her play calls will allow us to have wide open threes.
Mhm. I love that. I coached at the high school level with a coach named Dave Boyce, who's I think he's got 600 or 700 high school wins. I mean, he's one of
Yeah.
the all-time great coaches in Ohio. And if they didn't get anything in early offense, it was set play. It was set
Yeah.
play, and it was based on the personnel, right? What are we trying to get within this given possession? We had a very big playbook compared to any place that I had played or coached previously as a player for just a high school team. Like our that high school playbook was probably bigger than the college playbook when I played because
Yeah.
we ran more of a motion, so there wasn't as many. But the ability to like see a play and say, "Here's the shot that we're going to be able to get," and then the players to be able to execute it takes a ton of discipline. It takes a
Yeah.
ton of discipline from your players. But this goes back to what I'm always saying: like, there's more than one correct way to get the job done, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you buy in, like the proof is in the pudding. You go from 1 win to 23 wins, right? From executing, from putting in the time, buying to the system is really, really cool. Really, really cool to hear. The overall state of the women's game. I mean, you're really excited, obviously, 23 wins, like, new coach, like you guys had a very successful season. This has been a really successful season for the women's game in general. What are your thoughts and where do you think this is going?
I think it's amazing, honestly, because like we were talking about before we were recording, I feel old, and it was it was so different when I was playing. Like I really like WNBA wasn't talked about, like really college women's sports wasn't talked about at all. So, and honestly, props to Caitlin Clark and all of them because they are just like they are literally changing the game and like giving women's sports a name for themselves, and I think that's amazing. And we also played Caitlin Clark this year in our Florida tournament, and she is incredible in person. She's incredible. But I just think like even the viewership of everything going up, it's awesome and people are excited about it. And One thing about Purdue Fort Wayne, since Coach Mark has been here, our attendance record has gone up 83%.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing.
Very cool.
And obviously that's women's basketball, but also like we're winning games.
Mhm.
Like, teams are good and girls are good. Like people are going to come out, and I think that is awesome. So
Mhm.
I'm excited for it. I think the WNBA is going to be good. College women's basketball is good. There's good people, and I'm glad that people are getting the props that they finally deserve.
Mhm. Very well said. One of the things I love about watching, you know, March Madness, women's NCAA tournament, you just see, and watching them in the men's game as well. When you watch college basketball, I love the contrasting styles that lead to team success, right?
Mhm.
So many different ways to get the job done, right? And that's just so much. Whereas I feel like if you watch, the NBA is an example, it's a little more copycat. You see a little more like every team kind of plays a little bit better, and if they knock down more shots, they're going to wind up winning that
Yeah.
game. You go to the women's game, right? There could be, like Iowa has a ton of things that they run within their offense as far as ball screens and handoffs. And Caitlin Clark is one of the reasons I like watching her play is how much movement she does off the ball, right?
Mhm.
She's just as hard to guard off the ball as she is on the ball. And then you go with, okay, like we got a team like South Carolina who you want to play half court, they can play half court, right? They can go in the post. You want to play
Yeah.
fast, they got the wheels to play fast, right? And just so many different ways to get the job done. UConn, right? A little more structure, right? They had a ton of injuries this year. Who knows what they would have accomplished, right? But a little more structure with how they run their offense. So many correct ways, and that's one of the reasons that I think college basketball is the best sport. The WNBA in general, 12 teams, 12 spots, 144 jobs. Where do you think that's going? I mean, my hope is we slowly just keep expanding because there's so many great college players that deserve to be in the WNBA. Only 144 jobs compared to 450 in the NBA. Plus, you got some two-way contracts and things like that.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, I just see it expanding because women's basketball, especially, is at a high right now, and people want to watch. Like, people want to buy tickets, people want to come. And I think if they expand that to more areas, they would definitely get the audience and the attention that they're looking for. So I think they can make money off women's basketball just like men's basketball makes
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm. What's a scouting report on Caitlin Clark? You guys getting ready to play her earlier this
Uh,
season?
try to keep the ball out of her hands as much as we can. She's tough. She's tough to guard.
Mm-hmm.
Got to
That's one of
guard
the
her.
reasons she's so tough to guard, though, is like I mean, she get a back cut for a layup once or twice every game. You
Yeah,
know.
and you want to say like as a coach, like, don't let her touch the ball. That's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. You really have to lock down and do the best that you possibly can for
Mhm.
however long your stint is on guarding her because she's incredible.
Yeah, and a good rebounder for a guard as well. So there's a lot of times it can't
She's
hard to
all
get
over
out of
the
her hands.
place
She got the
too.
defensive rebound. Yeah, she got a steal. She's down the court and continuing to play. Rapid fire questions here, Coach.
Oh
Rapid
boy.
fire questions as we finish out the podcast. You ready? You have not been prepped for any of these questions, so I'm excited to get after you. Good to go?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, quick response, minute or less on these questions. All right, first one. What's your player comp?
My player comp.
Yeah, who'd you compare your game to?
Oh,
I said I had to prepare you for these.
oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know.
I see a little like a little Paige Beckers.
I was a pull-up girl.
Yeah, like she can come off, she can catch and shoot it, but she can get that hard dribble down, right? Uh,
Tough start.
Similar frame, right? I can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll take that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you gotta go up from wherever you're at. Like, what's your
I
player
mean,
comp?
yeah,
And then you
for
pick
sure.
somebody and they say, okay, but they're also better than me, and like that's my player comp. Um, okay, transfer portal. Thoughts on the transfer portal?
Not a fan. I
Not a
think it's
fan.
not a fan. I think it's too much. I think people should be loyal to where they stay.
Hmm. Advice to a young man, woman that wants to get into college coaching.
I would say don't give up, because it's a grind, and do more than you're supposed to do, than what your job title says. Go out of your way to spend some extra time.
Advice for a young girl. She's got hoop dreams. She wants, just like little Kendall Muxlow, not that long ago, right? But I want to play college basketball someday. What's the advice that you would give them?
Watch film and work out with Steve Kramer. That's my two pieces of advice. I think film's super important.
Hmm.
Um, I had you watch my film a lot, even when I wasn't hitting shots, and you would know immediately what was wrong with my shot. So definitely watch film and work out with Coach Kramer, because I was a Division I athlete thanks to him.
Uh, Venmo cash isn't coming in the mail. So Venmo some money right here. As you think about your career as a high school player and then your career as a college player, what's something that if you could do it all over again, you do differently?
Honestly, I think I would watch more film and ask more questions.
Hmm.
I think in high school, I was content with how I was playing. And I think that I should have gone to more people and asked more questions about things that I could have done better or that would have helped me at the next level.
Hmm. I appreciate you being open enough to ask me questions then, because that's
Yeah.
not the field that I and us getting to know each other. I felt like you were always, if something was up, like I'm getting an email from Kendall asking me questions, asking me, hey, can you look at this game film stuff? Um, for me, you're right on the money with that. For me, I felt like because I was the best player,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was supposed to know. And if you ask questions, that means you don't know, right? And so it's this weird balance because as a teenager, high school teenager, I was self-conscious, right? As much as I was really hungry to learn, and if somebody was speaking, I was a great listener. I also should have asked more questions, but I wanted everybody to feel like, Steve knows what he's doing. Steve, he's the best player. Like he knows what he's doing. Like, no, ask more questions, right?
Yeah.
Ask for feedback. Like that's a huge one for players at every level, not just high school basketball players. Most important skill. We went a little over on that question, my bad. Uh, Most important skill in the women's game.
Ooh, on the court, I think ball handling is such a huge thing. I think ball handling, you got to be able to handle the
Hmm.
ball. Even if your job is to shoot, you're gonna handle the ball at some point. You got to be able to take care of it, because
Mhm.
there's some good defenders out there. So I think, yeah, ball handling. And that's something
So
you can work on, like that's such a quick, easy thing to work on. Like you can work on that in your garage. You can work on that on the sidewalk if you want. Like you don't need a gym for it.
mhm, mhm. If you could go back as like a third, fourth, fifth grade girl, that's something that you'd spend a lot of time on, just handling the ball.
I think I would take it more seriously. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's something that you do at the beginning of practice, and your back's bent over and you're not doing it right and you're tired, and I think I would have taken it more seriously. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Very good. Um, Kendall, this has been great. We covered a lot in a rather short amount of time. Love to have you back on the podcast again down the road. Last one. This is it. We're both from the Thumb, right? The
Yeah.
Thumb of Michigan. So shout out to the Thumb of Michigan. Any advice for players in that specific area, men's and women's, where they really want to play basketball at the college level? But as you know, there's no colleges in the Thumb,
Right. Yeah.
and it's not like a easy recruitable spot because it's kind of the way Michigan is shaped. Also, like you really
Yeah.
got to go out of your way almost if you want to go to the Thumb. But you're an example, three-time All-Stater, Division I athlete. There's some players that can come out of the Thumb as well. If you're in an area that is, rural, low population, and you want to get, your game out there, and you want to have increase your likelihood of playing at the next level, what's the advice you give those players?
My first piece of advice is to reach out to coaches and just send your film. I used to send my film like after every 5 games, and I would just send it to a bunch of colleges like within the radius that I wanted to go. So definitely send your film. Don't be afraid. Like if they don't answer, they definitely saw it. They saw it. So, and sometimes like they can't answer. So send your film, be consistent with sending your film, because they are looking at it. And two, get in the AAU world. And I had to drive pretty far for AAU practice. Shout out Michigan Mystics, but they were so good to me and they obviously got my name out there. And so I think AAU is very, very important, especially your junior year. That's a big, big summer for people
Mhm.
who want college.
Great advice right there. You mentioned AAU, so let's hit that real quick before we finish this up. Michigan Mystics are well-known, well-run women's AAU program in the state of Michigan, and they help produce a lot of college athletes.
Yeah.
But there's also ones that feel like, man, like we're not. If there's a complaint I get a lot from parents, it's about how their AAU practices are run and the coaches and this coach, like, how did you go about finding a solid AAU program to play for? Because like a high school program, there's levels to this, and there's
Yeah.
coaches and programs that are doing it at a really high level, and then there's ones that are just kind of one foot
Yeah.
in, one foot out.
I think the first thing I guess is to figure out like what your goal is and what your realistic goal is. That might be kind of hard to hear, especially as a high school student. But figure out like where you think you're best going to be fit at, and then try and find those programs that are going to bring in those coaches to your games. My AAU team, I played with some pretty big name girls, so the coaches that came to our games were way above my level, but like I was able to get my name out there. And even if you play for a program that you don't think is great, if you're good enough, people will find you.
Mhm.
And especially at the AAU tournaments, those are such big tournaments. There's so many teams there. There's so many coaches there. If you're putting the ball in the basket, people will show up.
Mhm. Mhm. Well said. And I think one of the big things that you mentioned outside of like, if you can play, people are going to find you. 100% true. Is being realistic about what, those aspirations may be, and do they line up with your game? Like, I just hate to see, like we'll have a kid that probably chance to play at the small college level, maybe D3, and
Yeah,
they're playing in a AAU tournament in Vegas and an AAU tournament in Orlando and an AAU tournament in Houston, and say they're
yeah,
from Ohio. I say, well, at your level, a lot of those D3 schools, they don't have the budget to travel around the country and
yeah,
watch. You're better off getting recruited by more schools if you actually played in Fort Wayne, right, and
right,
Grand
yeah,
Rapids, Michigan, and maybe like a Cleveland or a Toledo, a Columbus, hitting more of these local AAU tournaments, because that makes sense for those, a Division III coach, an NAIA coach, a JUCO coach. They don't have a big spending budget. They're going to
yeah,
recruit kids locally. You're playing Division I, right? You're going, to some
right,
other
yeah,
places, but you also played a lot of places in the Midwest, and
yeah.
that's plenty big enough. You're going to get a lot of good competition. So again, Kendall, I can't thank you enough for joining the Coach's Edge podcast. This was great. To our listeners, if you have a player, like Kendall dropped a lot of really good nuggets for somebody with some aspirations, send them this episode. Send them, have them listen to it. You're listening to someone who worked their tail off as a high school athlete, worked their tail off as a college athlete, continuing to work their tail off, right? Now coaching at the college level, director of operations. And she's sharing like in the now, right? She just finished. She was just a college athlete, of some of the things that it takes to be successful at those levels. Kendall, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
To all the listeners, get after today.